Are you conscious that some of the time your essays on Jekyll and Hyde are quite frankly a little bit boring, a little bit formulaic, a little bit going through the motions and not quite getting you the high marks that you need to get a grade 9? This video is going to be incredibly useful because I'm going to give you some pointers about the flair, the actual development of ideas and the integration of context which is needed to get full marks for this. So stay tuned because you're watching Schofield on Shakespeare.
Here's what I will be covering in this video. You can skip to any of these sections by using the hyperlinks within the description box below, although I would recommend watching the video in sequential order. In the OCR GCSE English Literature exam, you'll have 45 minutes to complete one writing task on Dr. Jekyll and Mr Hyde. You can either answer a question which provides you with an extract to form the starting point of your response, or you can tackle an essay question for which there isn't an extract and for which you are asked to explore at least 2 moments from the novel to support your ideas. This video will help you write better essays for the first question. Here's what the mark scheme looks like. At the top end, the best responses show an outstanding understanding of the text. So you've read it many times and made notes on key characters and themes. You write formally, accurately and engagingly and focus sharply on the question. You embed plenty of relevant, deliciously precise quotations. And remember, this exam is closed book, and so you need to have memorized enough of these before entering that exam hall. After quoting, you probe the language form and structure and explore effects. Why has this particular word been used? What exactly does it mean within this context? And what is the effect of this? You use subject terminology accurately, i.e. words and phrases such as noun, adverb, simile, personification. And then, importantly, you take account of the context and use this to create a more sophisticated, nuanced argument. So, you might reference Darwin's On the Origin of Species. If humans and apes shared common ancestors, what might that suggest about the ultimate futility of human beings attempting to subdue animal passions? You might reference Victorian values, class hierarchies, and the pressure placed on individuals to conform to very narrow expectations. Could this be viewed as one of Jekyll's motivating factors in creating Hyde? Or might certain attitudes to Hyde stem unhelpfully from perceptions about the undeserving poor, worthy only of contempt, rather than anything approaching compassion? Or you might reference some of the key historical events of the period, particularly those which relate to violence and concerns about violence. There are also full marks available for your spelling, punctuation and grammar, essentially the accuracy of your writing. So here's the question taken from the sample paper. Explore how Stevenson presents evil through the presentation of Mr Hyde in this extract and elsewhere in the novel. And here is the extract taken from the chapter entitled Dr Lanyon's Narrative. If you have the Penguin Classics edition of the novel, you can find it on pages 51 to 52. Press pause to read this through now. The video will resume in 5 seconds time. How should you structure your main paragraphs? Well, I would suggest something along these lines. For goodness sake, don't waste time waffling about what happens in the novel. Don't waste time retelling the story. Instead, start each paragraph by answering the question. In relation to this essay title, your opening sentences could look like those about to appear on screen. Next up, of course, comes the quotation, which either you would have memorized beforehand or taken from the extract. Get these in early within your paragraphs. This ensures that you explore details and nuances rather than loose generalities. Then, language analysis, the AO2 delving. Don't pass over this in order to focus solely on your arguments. Indeed, probing particular words in detail should help you clarify or develop further your initial point. Then, development of your arguments and integration of relevant contextual points. Time to let you loose on your own response. Spend 45 minutes answering this question. The extract will reappear in 5 seconds time. Press pause. Here's my response. This extract is from the penultimate chapter of the novella and is written from Dr. Lanyon's perspective. At this point in the novella, Jekyll has found himself transforming into Hyde without his powders. Hyde is wanted throughout London for the brutal murder of Sir Danvers Carew. He needs Lanyon's help to obtain the powders within Jekyll's locked laboratory so that he can return to the safety of his respectable self. This extract contrasts with Hyde's appearances earlier in the novella, in that his dependence on Lanyon's cooperation results in a more explicit attempt to repress his evil impulses. Hyde's evil is so all-pervasive that those that come into contact with him immediately sense it and recoil. In this extract, Lanyon feels a certain icy pang along his blood after Hyde has sought to shake him in his desperation and impatience. What is notable here is that Hyde, at this point, has said very little. There have been 2 frantic questions, but nothing in his language to particularly shock or frighten. Thus it is clear that there is something about the essence of Hyde, something about his physical being and presence, which causes others to feel short, sharp, arctic shudders. Indeed, it is also notable that the way Hyde is dressed in this scene, in Jekyll's clothes, enormously too large for him in every measurement, should make those present laugh. But Lanyon observes that the ridiculous accoutrement was far from doing this, in spite of the fact that Hyde in theory may look like a kind of clown, or someone playing a game by trying on clothes which obviously don't fit. Thus the evil which emanates from Hyde is so insidious that it overrides traditional reactions to normal human behaviour. Here Lanyon is struck by Hyde's seizing, surprising and revolting essence, and these present participles seem to point to the active and ongoing nature of the effect he has on others. He leaves them temporarily frozen, astonished and appalled, without quite being able to specify why. Earlier in the novel, Utterson is affected similarly and described Hyde as pale and dwarfish, giving an impression of deformity without any nameable malformation. Hyde's evil appearance unsettles because it cannot quite be pinned down or precisely labelled. However, descriptions of his deformity and stunted growth tap into Victorian concerns about de-evolution. If humans and apes shared a common ancestor, as stated within Darwin's Origin of the Species around 25 years before the publication of the novella, might it be possible for respectable Victorian folk to regress to dangerous primitive ways of being, thus threatening the burgeoning prosperity and safety of the middle classes in cities such as London and Edinburgh? So Hyde's individual evil aura appalls, but he also prompts wider fears about the stability of society as a whole, already shaken by contemporary violent incidents such as the 1882 Phoenix Park political assassination, or the use of dynamite in underground stations in 1883. Hyde's evil is also seen in his instinctive need to resort to physical violence to fulfill his goals and desires. Again, something particularly disturbing for a contemporary Victorian readership, becoming increasingly concerned about the underclasses living in terrible conditions within cities. In this extract, the physical violence is relatively mild. Hyde seeks to shake Lanyon, something which he is able to deal with fairly easily by putting him back. However, elsewhere in the novel, the violence is far more striking, pun intended. Hyde tramples calmly over a child's body, like some damned juggernauts, and also clubs Sir Danvers Carew to the earth with ape-like fury. With the first incident, it is the juxtaposition of trampling, treading heavily on something in order to flatten down, with the adverb calmly, which is so shocking, added to the fact that the victim is a defenceless girl. If someone can commit such atrocities without getting worked up, then the implication may be that such violence and evil have the potential to become ordinary and everyday, thus further threatening the order of Victorian society. That said, when Hyde kills Sir Danvers Carew, he is emphatically not calm. He uses ape-like fury. This hyphenated simile once again links Hyde and evil with the lack of control of supposedly inferior, less civilized species. Humans can, in theory, listen to reason and be corrected. Apes and other such creatures cannot. The concern with someone like Hyde is that his evil cannot be contained, cannot be stopped, cannot be reasoned with. Thus, he terrifies. However, any essay exploring Hyde's evil must also reference the role played by Jekyll, his creator. In the final chapter of the novella, Jekyll admits openly that after creating his devilish potion, like schoolboys, he would relish stripping off these lendings in order to spring headlong into the sea of liberty. This phrase provides insight into the repressive, hypocritical nature of Victorian society. Just as Utterson feels compelled to mortify a taste for vintages and avoid the theatre he loves, so Jekyll feels as though he cannot express all sides of his character without repercussions. He feels he cannot be fully free. His creation of Hyde is pure evil. However, the more interesting question is the extent to which Victorian society contributed to Jekyll's decision to create Hyde. If Jekyll had lived in a more permissive time, such as the 21st century, in which homosexuality and late-night dalliances were far more commonplace and widespread for all classes of society, would he have even felt the need to follow through with his scientific urges? In Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Hyde's evil is seen in his casual, often indiscriminate use of violence, and the way others instinctively recoil when they come into contact with him. His grotesque appearance evokes contemporary concerns about de-evolution. Is there a chance human beings, especially those from the threatening underclass, could return to more primitive, savage, evil ways of being? However, it is also possible to argue that the creation of a solely evil figure such as Hyde was partly caused by a Victorian society unrealistically and obsessively preoccupied by reputation. How does this response meet the criteria within the mark scheme? If watching this in the classroom, why not press pause to discuss now? So we need the coherent, critical style, the informed personal response, the consistently perceptive understanding. This is seen throughout. For instance, in my point that the evil from Hyde is so insidious that it overrides traditional reactions to normal human behaviour. We and Lanyon want to laugh at him in his ridiculous oversized clothes, but can't. AO1 is also about development of points and argument, which is something I do here when building on some of the reasons why contemporary readers would have been so disturbed by Stevenson's presentation of evil within Mr. Hyde's. Note how quotations are skillfully embedded, with square brackets used where necessary in order to tweak individual words to ensure that my sentence as a whole makes sense and flows seamlessly. The analysis of language, form and structure is particularly detailed, aided by the re-quoting of individual words. Here I probe exactly what is so unsettling about Hyde's trampling calmly of a little girl, and the meaning and effect of the phrase ape-like fury. Subject terminology is used naturally and accurately. And I weave in references to the context with comments about Darwin's Origin of the Species, violent historical incidents, and Victorian society integrated fully within my arguments.
So what's needed to end up with that grade 9 in your Jekyll and Hyde OCR GCSE English Literature essay? Well, for me, it's important to remember that you've got to show the examiner you've got a terrific understanding of the text as a whole. Of course, on one level, you're starting off with the extract, but ultimately you need to broaden out from that. I think also they're looking for a bit of flair. They're looking for interesting, engaging, lively responses, moving away from the formulaic response of always beginning each paragraph in the same way. And actually what a lot of pupils find trickier is this concept of integrating the context. So it's not just a tag on, but it's tightly woven in within your arguments. I hope it's been helpful. Many thanks for watching. Schofield on Shakespeare.